Yeah. All right. So we're here today to discuss the issue of the book reconsideration. Before we do that, there's two short issues I wanted to discuss. One is I talked to Laurence yesterday, and checks will be ready Thursday and or Friday. So Laurence, Martha, we decided that she would let you know, and you will email Janie, Bonnie, and me.
Okay.
Bill is out of the country. So Janie, are you in the next couple of days?
Yes.
Good. Okay. And I am as well. So we'll make sure that those checks are signed when we hear from Martha. And secondly, the bookshelves are in. If you haven't seen them, I was there the other day with Martha and we took a peek. They look fabulous. Are they doing any tiling today, ladies? Do you know?
Yes.
Oh, good. So now we have that to look
Definitely
forward to.
working this morning.
Enough that you've been able to take a peek at it?
I haven't looked yet, but
Okay.
there were sounds of power those
Those are good sounds then.
I hope that's what they're doing.
And also the door and signage go in next week. So they're on the most recent schedule. So that's all good news. As far as the book discussion, we're here because I have called an ad hoc committee, which the president can do when an additional committee is necessary. John brought to my attention that the procedures for a review of a book to be reconsidered refers to a committee which we did not have in place when Katie and Eliza and I began talking about this. So now we do. So Eliza, you said you had some background on that. Oh, sorry. No. My cleaning lady's here, so I have the dogs. Sorry. So Eliza, did you have some background on the ad hoc procedure or?
I mean, I have the procedure up in front of me. We just looked up the ad hoc to make sure whether or not the meeting needed to be recorded.
Oh, okay. I presume I got a flag that we got a recording, which is good. So this will now be a standing committee, although it's sort of like intergovernmental. I don't, in 11 years that I've been on the board, this is the first time we've been in a meeting. So, but it certainly we as a board will be aware of its existence, and you guys as staff know that you should call upon the committee in situations like this. So some quick background. This came to my attention on July 29th, Friday. Katie sent me an email. Eric had asked her to pick this situation up. I met with Eliza and Katie on Monday the 1st. And Eliza, can you give us the background on how this came into the library's attention?
The request for reconsideration?
Yeah. I understand there was an interchange between Mr. Tyrrell and staff. Neither Eric nor Katie was a part of that. Can you tell us anything about that?
Yes, they were both in a meeting. The interaction happened at the front desk. Mr. Tyrrell, how do you say his name? Terrell.
I don't know. Tyrrell.
Mr. Terrell approaches the desk with the book, asking the staff member to have the book reconsidered officially. The staff member offered him up the information about the policy and a printed out version of the request for reconsideration form that we have.
Which staff member was this?
It was Anna Fivehouse.
Okay.
Who is very well versed in all of this.
Yeah, she's a great person to be the first contact on this.
Yes.
Eliza, did the individual actually use those words? I'd request this for reconsideration.
I don't believe that the specific language was used, but that was the inference.
Great, thank you. And sorry, everyone, I was looking under Katie's name for the link for this meeting. Sure. Okay. And so everybody got an email, including Katie, saying, please send me the link. So anyway, sorry about that.
No, I'm sorry. I should have had my email open.
It's okay. Do we need notes taken? Has that already been? I don't know what.
Taking care of it.
Okay, thank you.
So Anna was the first contact, and then she notified.
She notified us after the communication was complete. She gave him the paper form. He indicated that he was going to keep the book to refer to while he was filling that out, but that he was planning on returning it when he came back. And she let us know when we were out of the meeting.
Did either of you or Katie or Eric talk to him on Friday the 29th?
No.
Okay, then as far as I know, the first contact we then had with him, he filled out the form, and at some point in time, he delivered a letter to the library and addressed to me,
Yes.
which I picked up on the 1st, which was Monday. Also, I talked to Katie and Eliza on Monday, got the background. I also advised Katie that she follow up with our legal counsel, which she did, I believe, on the 1st or the 2nd at the latest. I called him on the 3rd. He's got a real funky voicemail machine. I really couldn't tell if it was his home or just some out there thing. And I called the second time and I didn't get any voicemail. So at that point, I wrote a letter, which I emailed to Katie, and she updated it with 2 sentences on advice of counsel, which simply explained that the board would be advised and it would be discussed at the August meeting. I thought I did it earlier, but I just sent you all actually a photo of that letter so that you would have it for your records. So then Katie mailed the letter on the 3rd. Each day I continued to call him, or he called me back. We were doing a phone tag. And then on the 4th, we did reach each other. And at that point, he had not yet received the letter from the library, but he and I had a lengthy discussion, which I sent you notes of yesterday. So that's where we stand. Also, a little background, I couldn't find the email. There were a lot of emails buzzing around on this. Katie informed me that also legal counsel advised us that were it to become an issue addressed by the public at a board meeting, we should state the guidelines of public speaking at the board. And also any comments should be specific to the request to reconsider this book, not a larger topic of whatever other issues one might engage because of the nature of this book. So that's something that we need to keep in mind. John, I'm going to turn it over to you because in this process, John pointed out that the procedure called for a committee, which we didn't have. Now we do. So John, do you want to give us your insight and feedback and suggestions?
Well, yeah, when I read the policy, it did refer to this committee, and I'm thinking, well, I wonder which committee that is on the board. And nothing seemed to, square peg in a round hole, nothing seemed to fit. So I thought, well, maybe there is a committee that I don't know about that this is kind of convenes from time to time for this purpose or for other purposes as well. But so I just raised the question about the committee, and it turned out that we don't really have, well, this is the committee, but it's been now formed, and it'd probably be a good idea to, I don't know if we have to change the bylaws, but maybe include something like this in the bylaws so that it probably won't be the last time something like this comes up. And it could be, the ad hoc committee would not necessarily be limited to reconsideration issues, but it could be a committee that just, anything that comes up that's outside the purview of any of the other committees. This could be a committee that could serve the purpose of dealing with those kind of one-off questions or issues that might occur from time to time that don't really fit into any of the other responsibilities. So
yeah, no, we'll have to brainstorm a name for it, but sort of a something or other committee. But you're right, it should be a standing committee to be convened for any number of these issues. So good. Thanks for the heads up. And
so this is the first meeting of that committee to consider the request for reconsideration.
Yeah. All right. So John, thanks. I tracked down the same research that you did on the book. I mean, we have an ample narrative from the author on the purpose in writing the book, the background of him as a young artist. The first thing I always do when I look at a particularly a children's book, because I always read the dedication, and the dedication is to mom who would love this book. So right from the start, I saw this as a certainly not a book on grooming any kind of behaviors that people might object to. And I know Katie also sent us some documentation. There's a Kansas library that had this same request, and they went through a process and they declined removing the book from their collection. So that has happened as well.
The same book, right? The same book?
The same book, yeah.
Okay.
So that's where we stand. So I actually would like to hear from everyone on the committee this opinion. What I explained to Mr. Terrell is that this is we rely on our staff to make recommendations of this nature, but that we would expect interplay in exceptional situations between the staff, the board, and so on and so forth. And that's what this committee does. So if we could hear from anyone, if you have objections, if you have any comments at all, this is the time to share them, and then we'll I would suggest that as a committee we form an opinion and we share that opinion with the board next week. And I can any other way to manage this, anybody speak up. So John, do you want to start us out?
Sure. Yeah, I would not support removing the book. I think little kids like to play, and it's about a playful little boy who's running around the house, and the little kids also like to take their diaper off and run around the house and not be confined by that. And yeah, I just thought it was a nice, playful little story about a boy that finds delight in dressing up, whether it's his dad's stuff that doesn't fit or his mom's that fit a little bit better. And I thought beyond that, I thought the message I took away that I think was a really positive message was the response from his parents. Instead of saying, that's not the right thing to do, they played along with him and made it into kind of a family game, that everybody, even the dog, got involved and created sort of probably a special memory for everybody. Didn't see anything, nefarious or whatever. Certainly not grooming. It's just little kids like to play around, and I think this was just kind of a special moment for the whole family. So I would not support removing the book.
Bonnie?
Yeah, so I read the book on Libby and found it to be so I started to relate my own experiences that other parents have shared with me of their kids playing dress up, boys or girls. And certainly it's not uncommon for a small boy to run around naked. My son did that. We lived in Puerto Rico, it was hot. Or to try on mom's shoes, especially when, maybe you have shoes gathering at the front door, right? And mom comes in her work shoes or whatever. It's very common. I've heard many friends repeat stories of, oh yeah, we enjoyed it. We took pictures, whatever. And then the third thing that occurred to me was really when I was at the Pabst Mansion just 2 days ago, and a tour, and there's a very prominent painting of their grandson that was born around the 1900. I sent that to all of you because I stopped the docent and said, oh, sorry, just want to make sure that's the grandson, right? And certainly I remember that turn of the century, even my husband's oldest sibling as a young child was dressed in what today would be considered very feminine clothing. So I say that because it was a societal norm. I don't think there was this concept of grooming back in the 19th century, but I think it's just an example of kind of norms changing. Like you, John, I think that there's a lesson in the book in regard to kind of the parents' reaction, right? It was, is this something I'm going to just, you know, kind of coaching parents on how would you react in this situation in such a way that hopefully it's a positive experience.
Mhm.
So I would not be in favor of removing the book from our collection.
All righty, thanks. Janie?
Well, I would repeat what everybody else said about this. I also had both a little boy and little girls who like to run around naked and like to dress up in clothes. And I have grandchildren who do the same thing. And I don't see any issue with that at all. As a matter of fact, I think that for the age of the child that this is aimed towards, this is a sort of an affirmation that, you know, I'm not the only one who likes to do this. They all do at that age. And I agree with both of you too, that just the acceptance from the parents is a very positive message, not only for the child, but for maybe parents reading the book to them who, you know, I mean, honestly, I'd kind of like to give this book to my husband because he makes comments about one of our grandsons who runs around in fairy clothes sometimes. And I say, he loves to do it. So what's the big deal? He's
Big deal.
4, you know, he was at the time. So, you know, I don't hear anybody jumping up and down if a little girl dresses like, you know, Peter Pan or a hobo or anything like that. So I think it's a great book to have in the library. And I did read somewhere that somebody, I don't know if it was you, Eliza, who sent this out, but somebody said that there was a challenge to it and the library opted to keep the book in their collection, but not put it up on a, you know, not feature it like at the top of a shelf on a little stand like we do sometimes. And I don't know, if that would make our patron happy, but I don't even really see the need to do that, but it's a possibility, but I definitely think we should keep it in the collection.
I had another question. Do we have any background information on how child psychologists view these kinds of books and these issues that would support not removing it? Like expert opinions is what I'm.
Yeah. So in general, well, I don't know if you want to speak to this more because you.
Okay, so, well, I don't necessarily have specific information about child psychologists and this. I feel based on cultural information that this is generally considered a very normal part of childhood. Trying on new things, whether it's dressing like a lion and roaring in the jungle or whatever. All of those are very natural part of childhood and exploring kind of your options in the world around you. The information that I do have, I don't believe that this book is specifically an LGBTQ book, but I believe that it is perceived by some people to be that way. And to that end, I do have information about the psychology of, or the statistics of being an LGBTQ youth, and the likeliness for depression or suicide attempts related to being that way.
Yeah, and there was also, we were looking at some statistics and one thing that they did say is that affirming spaces make a difference. So things like having support at school, at home. I think you could conceivably include the library in that as far as having books that reflect a variety of experiences that, you know, kids can see themselves in. And also, you know, kids that aren't LGBTQ also seeing a variety of people represented in stories.
Well, and
Very
to
true.
Bonnie's point as well, it's also could be useful for parents whose children might be in a questioning phase as to how to react in a scenario like that if it were to occur.
Liza, what's the age, what's considered the age appropriate range? I think a lot of children's books have some kind of coding on the back. Maybe it
They've
varies
actually
by
kind of done away
publisher,
with
but
that in general recently. I can tell you what it was reviewed for, the age ranges that it's reviewed for. So Book List has preschool through grade 1, School Library Journal, which tends to be a little bit more conservative than the others, has preschool through grade 1. Publishers Weekly says ages 3 to 6, so preschool through grade 1. And
Mhm.
Kirkus is also ages 3 to 6.
yeah. And it's just another thing, again, from my own experience, I have more frequently also seen where that age range 3 to 6, sometimes the little boys are wearing nail polish at the playground. Again, I think it's just who's the primary caregiver, right? Is the primary caregiver wearing nail polish? Not that I examine all these things, but I think it's fairly, I don't think it's out of the realm of quote normal behavior for a 3 to 6 year old.
I agree.
Yeah, especially to mimic the behavior and clothing and interests, et cetera, of the primary caregiver. If whoever happens to be a woman is going to
Yeah.
dress and so on in one fashion versus a dad who would do things differently. Well, I certainly agree with Bonnie and Janie and John, and I did from the very start when I read this book and reviewed it. I think it's a delightful story. I think it's actually a tribute to parenthood and good parenting. It's a nice little book, and it's well illustrated. And any Caldecott winning illustrators book that we have in our library, the more we have, the better. And we're a better library because of that. And actually, I did discuss that with Mr. Terrell, and he really softened during his conversation, which I was relieved at, of course. When I talked to Katie and Eliza originally, I didn't know, and I think Katie really didn't know what was behind this. Was he representing a group of people who were taking a position, which is happening? I'm sure you ladies can tell us it's happening around the country. So it was important that we put our guard up. Thanks to John, we improved that by actually having a committee that we said we had in the first place. So we have to be prepared for, what you could have a dribble, you could have a torrent of this sort of situation. But after speaking to him, I don't know where the grooming came from. Janie, you and I have talked about that term when we were discussing fundraising once, that the term it's powerful and it's strong in today's society. So that put our guard up as well. He seems to be just concerned about this book, and he did ask in his letter, he said that he hoped we were not going to have any cross-dressing storytelling time, which I'm sorry, I just never in my life thought I'd be talking about cross-dressing storytelling.
Yeah.
So I asked Katie, and she, and that's an email that I keep trying to send to you guys and doesn't seem to want to go to you, but it's, she responded that, first of all, no, we do not have a plan for a cross-dressing storytelling schedule at this time. So in all honesty, that's what I explained to our patron. When I talked to him, he volunteered the fact that his daughter, who lives in Colorado, is living here for the summer with them, and he shared the book with her. And he didn't tell me whether she addressed it positively or negatively, but her response was, well, Dad, in the town where I come, we have cross-dressing storytelling. So that's where that came from. That just, I think, heightened his awareness to, my goodness, this is going on everywhere and blah, blah, blah. So I told him no, but I did, when Katie and I were going back and forth in emails, she pointed out that in discussions with staff as you approach Pride Week, there's been some discussion about having such storytelling. And she said, I can't rule out that that won't happen in the future. And I wouldn't want to rule it out because of this one situation, all of which I totally get. My response to her, and I just want to hear from Janie, John, and Bonnie, because I don't want to be too harsh or too cautious. My response to her was, you know, I don't think the board has ever said, gotten involved in the choice of programming, but at the same time, programming and all activities, et cetera, should keep in mind our taxpayer base, our position with donors, and our position with the Friends. So we wouldn't want to do something. I don't know if we want to do something that would upset them or not. And so I don't want to speak as one person creating too strong of an opinion, but I just want to know what the other board members feel about if this is going to be a sensitive issue. I mean, again, this is more when I was thinking this was a group of people who were going to arrive at a board meeting would take a stand, which is, I don't think what's happening. But should there be a point where programming of a sensitive nature should be approved by the board or discussed with the board? Because it wouldn't be approval, it would be discussion. And maybe, John, that's what the point of this new committee is all about.
It could be another role of this committee, and is so it doesn't have to come before the full board, but it could come. Committee come with a recommendation to the board if it needs to. The board needs to act on it. But yeah, I think it could be a legitimate role for this committee.
Okay.
I do have two questions as I'm taking notes here. Did Mr. Terrell actually use the word grooming, or was that?
Yes,
something?
in his letter.
In the
Oh,
letter,
okay.
It said this is grooming at its best.
Ah, okay. I thought I read that, but I don't remember
Yes,
that.
yes.
Okay. And then the other thing is, did he actually bring in his grandchild, and his grandchild showed interest in the book?
No, my understanding, and Eliza, maybe you know this, my understanding, well, first of all, he is not a card holder, his wife is. And my
Okay.
understanding is that she had chosen the book and then gave it to her husband, and his follow-up was to write the letter and I guess to return the book or have a discussion. Am I
Okay,
correct on that?
so what prompted her to come in and choose the book? I mean, did she bring the grandchild in?
To the best of my
Or
knowledge,
was she looking for a book in response to her? I don't know how all of this came about.
Eliza, do you know anything further?
to the best of my knowledge, she didn't have any staff assisting her in finding books.
Okay,
And Janie, as I stepped into this with Katie and Katie first, and actually Eric had been involved in the conversations first, and then Katie, I got a real heightened concern vibe. So I thought perhaps, well, let's put it this way, based on what's happened in other libraries, people have gone to the library in search of certain books. And for instance, she might have had this title, to choose a book and then to create this environment. I don't think
that's what I was wondering, if
Yeah.
that's what happened, or if she actually brought a child in and the child found the book, or she found the book while the child was looking or something. I
don't know. I don't think
No.
that she came in seeking a particular book to promote a cause. I don't think that at all. Whether or not she was just, maybe your daughter was in, I had no idea, but I know that her daughter and her family are visiting for the summer. And that his daughter and he had this conversation about ultimately the library at her hometown that had this programming. So anyway, that background went on. I just wanted to make sure that we continue to respect the integrity of the staff in making decisions, but there are times when we all have to sit down and maybe talk about things, especially in a kind of I'm going to say politically charged, in terms of library politics charged environment that we appear to be in right now. So Martha and Eliza, do you want to share any thoughts?
Well, I was going to suggest we should also look at this request from the perspective of our collection policy. We do have a staff recommendation that Katie and Eliza had prepared. And I mean, they're basically in agreement that the book should be retained in the collection. and that it also meets our selection criteria.
It exceeds
Yeah.
our
And-
collection development criteria.
Because even like the question of what the book promotes or doesn't promote or says, we kind of have to look at it from the perspective of, does it meet our selection criteria? Does it meet our deselection criteria for what we would remove? And in fact, our policy does specifically say that we don't remove material based on, someone finding it objectionable. So the staff recommendation is aligned with what was just discussed with the board, but I did want to note the policy reasons for that recommendation and how that operates in light of our collection policy.
Eliza?
Yeah, I mean, we have the statement here, if you guys would like to hear it. The book received 3-starred reviews out of about 4 major publications that we make our selection based off of, which is very lauded as far as that goes. We generally buy anything with a starred review. We might skip it if it feels out of line with the rest of our collection, but that is a much rarer circumstance. 26 other area libraries own this book. For us not to own it would absolutely be the exception, rather than I'm basically reading the statement to you guys.
36.
Oh, it's 36. My apologies. 36 area libraries.
Well,
own
that's
this
a good
book.
choice. It's a cute book.
It's very cute. And Peter Brown, as you mentioned, Kathy, is exceptionally well regarded as an author, as an illustrator. He does have a Caldecott honor for Creepy Carrots, I believe it is.
I didn't know he was the Creepy Carrots guy.
He's the illustrator,
Okay.
but not the author.
Creepy Carrots is a great book.
Creepy Carrots is good. Love his visual style. And I guess I don't know, anything else?
Not with that. I mean, I'm in agreement with the
Yes,
assessment,
I
professional assessment.
absolutely agree with you guys in terms of professional assessment. One of you had said something about making decisions based on the opinion of a single taxpayer. I do have concerns about a single taxpayer speaking for a broader base. There are other taxpayers who may feel strongly that they want this here, that they would like to be able to see certain types of programming in the future. I don't want to be ignoring their needs because we have a person who is vocal first.
No, my comment, so Katie did not say a taxpayer, I said taxpayer base, but which is 5,000 people. So yeah, I'm not suggesting that one person. One of the documents that Katie sent me and probably to everyone was, I said it really well, that a person has the right to object to a book, and they have the right not to read it, but they don't have the right to keep other people from reading that book, and that's what public libraries are for.
Right.
So no, I don't want you to. I'm not suggesting. I'm just suggesting that sometimes a topic takes a discussion. Does the community in general want this? I mean, actually, we've never had that conversation. I don't know if it exists. I was my concern was piqued at the beginning of this whole issue, less so now. I was, after the first conversation with Katie, I was concerned that 45 people were going to be on our Zoom at the next board meeting. I don't think that's the case. After talking to Mr. Terrell, this seems to be his personal and family concern. And I think that he will, I think he'll accept our decision graciously, I hope. If not, we'll go from there. But this is not a groundswell situation that I'm aware of at this time. I have no reason to think that. So thanks for all of the background you guys have done on all this.
Hey, speaking of background, is this the first request for reconsideration that we have dealt with, all of us? Do we know if it's the first one for our library or maybe the first one in our tenure as a group?
It's the first one that has reached, I think, any
More formal.
because usually I've had a few people who have, and I've worked here for 17 years. So like I've had maybe 2 people in that time who've come up to the desk and been like, you know, I checked out this book and this isn't appropriate for kids. It's always been adult stuff too, at least when I've dealt with it. And what I've said when I've had those situations, what we train all staff to say is like, okay, well, we have a process for that. Here's the form and the policy. Would you like me to print you a copy? And every time that I've had that, it's like, oh, there's a form involved. I'm not doing that. And they, you know, or they're looking for me to take an action that I couldn't take. Like I would be like, oh, horrors, and you know,
You're just gonna rip the book out of
I'll take it away right away. So it's been, when we've had people express concern about it previously, it's been more in kind of an informal way. It's never, to my knowledge, progressed to the actually someone filling out the form.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah, and it's the first time as a member of the board, it's ever, to my knowledge, in 11 years, come to the board attention. And actually, Mr. Terrell was kind of surprised. I mean, he seemed to be respectfully appreciative of the fact that there was a process and that we really cared about his opinion and would respond to it. So, you know, so that speaks well for it. Martha and Eliza, if you could, whatever this policy is and any additional documentation that perhaps board members are all unaware of, we should probably have it before the next board meeting. If you could get copies to the board members.
Yeah.
So members of the committee, do we, it sounds as though I hear unanimous support for denying the request. So do we have a motion? Let's see, do we have a motion to that, to the effect of, well, do we even need to make a motion? This is the committee. That we recommend to staff who makes that decision that the recommendation, I'm sorry.
Sorry, I think at the full board, there's a vote, so you would be making a recommendation to the.
We're making a recommendation to the board.
Yeah.
Yeah, this committee recommendation.
Yeah.
would be
Yeah.
to Support the staff recommendation of not removing the book from the collection.
And then the board would vote on that.
Yes,
Yeah. I so move.
yeah, and
Okay, John, let me get that motion right. So recommend to the board.
That we've considered
Okay.
the request and have
Yeah.
decided not to remove the book on the basis of our review and the staff recommendations to that
let's
effect.
use the title of the book instead of the book. What is it? Freddie
Right.
Gets Dressed.
Fred gets dressed.
Fred gets dressed.
Fred, cutie.
Okay, so upon the recommendation that we are recommending to the board that upon consideration of the book, Fred Gets Dressed, and I'll pretty it up. But we
Yeah,
are
our
recommending,
review and upon the and also upon the review and recommendation of the staff.
you recommendation of staff. Should we say in this motion to recommend the board not ask the staff, because it's the staff's purview to choose books, not ours. So I'm wondering if we should, you know, for us to just say we're not going to do it.
Would you like me to read you the procedure note for
Sure.
this circumstance?
Sure, 'cause then the, yeah, so that you see what the procedure is. We're just making and Janie, we're just making a recommendation to support the decision of the staff.
Right.
Okay, recommendation.
Right. Yep, that's right.
Support decision of staff.
So our policy, as it's appears on our website, says the appropriate committee shall meet to discuss the materials, considering both the request for reconsideration and the materials supplied by the library director related to reasons for selecting the specified resource and shall prepare a report on the material containing its recommendations on disposition of the matter.
Great, great. I can get that off the website.
Yes, we'll send you a link to that after this.
Thank you.
Okay, and then he and I agreed that that either Katie or I would follow up with him within 1 week of the board meeting, and that would be Katie unless he chooses to speak to me again, which I'm happy to do. And then I think the last bit of, to conclude this with, right now, this is an ad hoc committee which can be set up by the president anytime. So what we'll do is recommend to the board, as John suggested, that there be a permanent committee to, and we'll come up with a, Martha, you're great at snappy titles, sort of to deal with exceptional
Incidentals.
requests of the public or something like that, just something so that it's a catch-all for any number of things that might come up, that we now have a standing committee to that effect.
Right.
And then, as you say, I don't know if it requires bylaws, but we'll figure that out. Otherwise, we'll just add it to the role of all the other committees.
My immediate
Right.
thought, the judiciary, but I feel like that's maybe a little too.
You don't
Little
wanna-
extra gravitas.
you don't want to scare anybody away, but I have a little emoji next to it of some.
The tribunal.
Anyway, any other business today to discuss? I want to thank you guys. You all kind of jumped in on this and you were very supportive, and obviously it was on your mind with thoughts and emails and pictures and so on and so forth. And that's just what a great board we are and what a great library we are. So I'm happy to.
Thank you for
work on
reaching out
this.
to Mr. Terrell, though. Thank you for reaching out to the donors.
Sure. And as I said that, I mean, I had my guns up. I was ready to go, but he turned out to be a very pleasant man, and you know, he's entitled to his opinion. He's a nice guy, so hopefully
Sure.
that's the end of it. So anyway, if there is no other further business, then I will look for a motion to adjourn.
I so move. I so move.
A second.
Second.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. Take care. Enjoy the
Thank
rest
you
of
so
your
much.
day.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Sure. Bye-bye.